are 30-foot anacondas. Now, 30 is a big anaconda, but you're talking about those mysterious, like 50, 100-footers.
Yeah.
Okay, so take out the Amazon and take out anacondas for a second.
I have a theory that all giant snakes in the Amazon rainforest are descendants of the Titanoboa, so let's get into it, folks. I think we're going to start off today with a giant serpent that was enjoying a very muddy swim. Now, I don't think it's really often that you can go to a beach and stumble upon a terrifyingly huge snake at the shore, but that's what happened in this video. So there was a lone traveler and they came face to face with one of the biggest snakes the world has ever seen, which probably a Titanoboa or a descendant. Now, obviously, I don't think this is the kind of beach where you just go swimming or you hang out for the day with your friends. It doesn't really look like a very welcoming beach. It's got some very muddy shores and it's got these tall swamps, but it looks like perfect snake haven, so make of that what you will. This behemoth of a snake was instantly recognizable as soon as it appeared on camera. It could be seen slithering its way through the muddy waters towards the nearby swamp, and I don't know about you folks, but I was quite unsettled by the sight. Experts believe the serpent was well over 40 feet in length, which is pretty similar to the proportions of the Titanoboa. Thankfully, it didn't seem to notice the nearby human and just continued on towards the swamp. Look, coming face to face with this prehistoric giant would not have ended very well. We probably wouldn't have had the surviving footage, so it's a good thing the snake didn't turn around and it just kept going and slithering away. Builders in Brazil reportedly stumbled upon a 30-foot long, 990-pound snake at a construction site in the northern state of Pará. This massive reptile was unearthed after a controlled explosion at the cave of Altamira. Video footage that we have today captures the workers chaining the snake to a crane and lifting it to unveil its yellow spotted underbelly. So this kind of got some criticism and backlash from people who saw the snake was chained down and were like, hey, I'm not sure if this is real, but if it is, shame on these people for taking its life. A snake that big has probably been alive for a very long time, just now to be, taken out for a couple of pictures, what a waste. Now folks, we don't know if the snake lost its life during the removal process, but if I'm assuming this is a really old snake and a really big snake, I think it'll take more than just a big crane chaining it down to take its life. I don't know. My guess based off of my expert opinion. Okay, let's see if I can pronounce this next species correctly because I don't believe they have a common name yet. Eunectes acayama. I think I tried. So here's the thing. Technically this was identified as a new species of snake. But going back to my theory that all big snakes are descendants of the Titanoboa, bear with me here. So this 20-foot long Amazonian snake became one of the most notable superspecies to make the new species list this year. This is an apex predator. It slithers around the Amazon rainforest and is massively important to the environment. It keeps quite a few things regulated because, well, their prey habits. It is a predator, it has to consume prey. And you gotta keep prey in check or else you wind up with all sorts of invasive species. So if we're gonna determine some genetic distinctions between this big boy and some others in the region, researchers spent decades trudging through the Amazon to find species to take samples from. So they're kind of experts. And this year, results showcased just how genetically different this population of snake is from other similar looking species. In a published article describing the species, research authors suggest that this genetic difference was a result of recent speciation, meaning that these very recently diverged from their closest relative to become their own species, which means family tree going back, Titanoboa at top of tree. You see where I'm going here, folks? Also earlier this year, scientists working in the Amazon rainforest discovered another new species of snake. Yeah, this one might be the biggest in the world, which once again, you're seeing my family tree? So this was a team from the University of Queensland, and they traveled to the Amazon rainforest. They were looking for a previously undocumented snaky. They were going off of an invitation from local folks to observe these beings rumored to be the largest in existence. Where have I said that before? The team joined the hunters on a 10-day expedition to the Bameno region before paddling down the river system to find several snakes lurking in the shadows, lying waiting for prey. Now this was a statement from Professor Brian Fry, who is a biologist from the University of Queensland, by the way, and he said the size of these magnificent creatures was incredible. Apparently, these snakes were like over 20 feet long, which, once again, patterns of behavior. You see my theory? Now, this was made while filming for National Geographic's upcoming series, Pole to Pole. The team said they had heard anecdotal evidence that snakes of over 24 feet and over 1,000 pounds have been sighted in the area. Now, technically they're classified as green anacondas, which I should have mentioned earlier, but they are the world's heaviest snakes, according to the experts from natural history museums. So, the heaviest individual ever reported weighed 500 pounds, measuring almost 30 feet long. So, once again, we're gonna go back to Alexa's theory, which, look, when you think about it, like cryptids, Bigfoot is a species of cryptid, not just a one-off, it kind of all makes sense. Look, let's compare the green anaconda to another species, the reticulated python. They tend to be longer, they're more like over 20 feet and lighter. But experts studying that creature discovered that the northern green anaconda species diverged from the southern green anaconda almost 10 million years ago, and they only differ genetically by 5.5%. Once again, folks, diverged, related. Remember this. So going back to Fry, like our expert, it's quite significant to put it in perspective because humans differ from chimpanzees by only about 2%. So the team was like, okay, let's compare the genetics of the green anaconda with other specimens because they wanted to assess them as an indicator species for the health of ecosystems because, well, the Amazon is facing numerous threats. And yes, that should be common knowledge, but we do need to address it. Okay, well, let's talk about some uncomfortable encounters in the middle of nowhere, going back to point number 1 from today. Look, there's a video I have of this terrifying snake sighting that happened in a remote river. Now, I don't know exactly which river it is, but use your context clues, folks. Somebody was brave enough to stare directly into the eyes of a Titanoboa while they were in their kayaks. Everything started off fairly normal. They're just paddling down a river in their small crafts. But here's the thing. When the water's a little too quiet, something's a little too suspicious. Originally, there was no signs of any troubles lurking in the water, but the direct threat was already above the surface. Sitting directly ahead of them was this giant snake that was lying on a log. Now look, maybe the snake just wanted to get a tan, have a good time in the sun, dry out a little bit. That doesn't make it any less terrifying. The length of this bad boy was well above average. Once again, you have to consider the width of a prehistoric snake. It is so much bigger than any normal species, and this snake in particular was not afraid to show off its full stature. Now thankfully, once again, it looks like folks escaped without a scratch, but like, I wouldn't want to see that in the wild. So in 2002, during an expedition to the coal mines launched by the University of Florida and Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, large thoracic vertebrae and ribs were unearthed by the students Jonathan Block and Carlos Amarillo. Now this was in La Guajira, and a lot of fossils were unearthed over the course of the expedition, eventually adding up to like 186 fossils from 30 individuals. This expedition lasted until 2004, during which the fossils of the Titanoboa were actually mistakenly labeled as those of crocodiles. Which, how on earth do you do that? I have questions. In 2009, Mike Warner, a 74-year-old retired lithographer from Lisburn in Northern Ireland, poured his life savings into a search for the giant snake. He started off by commissioning satellite imagery, and then he organized a 2-week expedition to the Amazon rivers. And all of a sudden, all my expensive hobbies are looking super duper cheap. So being accompanied by his son Greg, they traveled to the region. They wanted to capture evidence of the Titanoboa. They assembled a whole team to carry out aerial surveys of selected areas. Well, after 12 days in the jungle, hazardous weather conditions, hundreds of still photographs, and hours of video, the guys captured a photo of what they claimed to be a gigantic snake, about 40 meters long and 2 meters wide. Now, there's been a lot of debate about how large modern snakes can grow, but 40 meters? Come on, folks, that is a Titanoboa. Now, yes, we do know by now that the Amazon is home to a lot of big snakes, but like 40 meters? Well, that's all for today, folks. I've been Alexa, resident Ookie Spooky Girly. See ya!